Some of the most beloved TV shows of all time were failures. Not underrated, not underlooked, but failures. They had low ratings. They lost their time slots. Networks gave up on them. And just like that, they were gone. But somehow, years later, these same shows are considered classics. Shows like Freaks and Geeks, Firefly, Arrest Development, during the Fox years, of course. So, what changed? How does something go from canceled to something people won't stop talking about? At first, the answer is kind of boring. Most shows don't get canceled because they're bad. They get canceled because of logistics. Wrong time slot, poor marketing, network interference. Take Firefly, for example. When it first aired in 2002, Fox didn't just mishandle it, they actively worked against it. Episodes were aired out of order, including the pilot, which meant audiences were dropped into a world with no context. The tone felt inconsistent, not because the show was confused, but because viewers were seeing the story incorrectly. Ratings dropped, confusion grew, and sadly, it was canceled after just 14 episodes. But years later, once fans could watch it in the intended order on DVD and streaming platforms, it clicked. What once felt messy suddenly felt intentional. Tight world building, strong character arcs, and a tone that blended sci-fi and western in a way TV hadn't really seen before. The show didn't change. The way people watched it did. Same thing with Freaks and Geeks. Premiered on NBC in 1999 and struggled almost immediately. It didn't really fit the mold of teen television at the time. Shows were either glossy and dramatic or broad and comedic. Freaks and Geeks was neither. It was awkward, it was slow, it was deeply human. Characters didn't have these big dramatic transformations. Episodes often ended without clear resolution. It felt more like real life than TV, and that made it harder to market. NBC didn't help, moving it around the schedule, premiering it on a Saturday, no less, pulling episodes, and eventually canceling it after only one season. But over time, something interesting happened. The exact thing that made it fail, its realism, became the reason people loved it. It felt honest in the way that most teen shows did. And as audiences grew older, they began to appreciate that honesty a lot more. And then there's the Arrested Development, the Fox run. When it first premiered, critics loved it, but audiences didn't fully show up. Part of this issue was its structure. The show moved very fast. Jokes stacked on top of jokes, storylines that called back to earlier episodes. If you missed one, you were already behind. Now, that kind of storytelling doesn't work well in a weekly format, but streaming? Hey, it's perfect. Once Arrested Development hit platforms where people could binge it, everything changed. Viewers could catch every callback, every running joke, every layered detail. The show didn't just become smarter. The audience finally had the tools to keep up with it. And that brings us to our biggest shift of all, the internet. Before streaming, canceled shows were basically gone. Now, they wait. Platforms like Netflix give shows a second life. Algorithms recommend them. Clips get shared on TikTok. Edits circulate on YouTube and Instagram. Shows don't come back. They get recontextualized. Even something like Breaking Bad, which wasn't canceled early, was part of its explosion in popularity to streaming. Its audience grew massively between seasons because audiences could just binge it and catch up. So imagine what that does for a show that never found its audience in the first place. Well, finally gets one. But there's something deeper going on too, because part of what makes these shows special is that they ended when they did. Or more specifically, they ended too soon. There's something powerful about a story that feels unfinished. Firefly has only one season. Freaks and Geeks ends without giving every character the closure that they needed. And because of that, fans keep thinking about them. They imagine what could have happened next. They'll rewatch episodes looking for details, they'll fill in the gaps themselves, and that kind of absence creates attachment. Because the story doesn't feel complete, it stays alive. And over time, being a fan of these shows becomes something more than just watching TV. It becomes an identity. Liking a popular show, that's easy. But loving a canceled one, that feels personal. It feels like you found something that other people missed. And that's why cult followings are so strong. Fans of Firefly still talk about it like it just aired. Freaks and Geeks is constantly being rediscovered by new generations. I myself saw it at 14. Arrested Development fans can quote entire scenes from memory. It's not just about the show. It's being part of something that lasted anyway, despite everything. So maybe these shows didn't fail. Maybe they were just ahead of their time. Maybe they needed a different format, a different audience, a different way of being watched. Because today, nothing really disappears, unless you're on HBO Max. Everything gets archived, rediscovered, shared again. And sometimes, all a show needs is time. Time for people to catch up. Time for the right audience to finally press play. Because cancellation isn't always the end. Sometimes, it's just where the story people actually remember begins.